Let's bring in now Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He is a CNBC contributor, the former FDA Commissioner. Dr. Gottlieb, what do you make of this report from Stat News on Gilead's drug?
Well, look, it's the latest in a series of data that we've gotten about this drug that indicates that the drug's active in the disease. And I think that there's probably enough accumulating data at this point that the regulatory agency might be able to consider either making it available under an emergency use authorization or through accelerated approval. There's a randomized study conducted by the NIH, the National Institutes for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, that's now probably fully enrolled. And now that that trial is fully enrolled, that really serves as a pivotal study that's going to tell us definitively how efficacious this drug is. And that could serve as a pivotal study to allow the agency to issue an accelerated approval if they wanted to on some of the accumulating data. There was also a data set published about a week ago in the New England Journal, albeit a non-randomized data set looking at the drug in a setting of compassionate use, but also showed some encouraging results. It was matched against historical controls. And all this data really is, at this point, it doesn't prove anything definitively, but it's all suggestive of a benefit. And the regulatory threshold for approval under an emergency use authorization in the setting of a public health emergency really allows flexibility to approve products, especially if they're used in a setting where there's no alternative treatment and patients are likely to die. I will just close by saying I think that this drug, my hunch all along, and we've talked about on this show, is that there's an indication that this drug is active in the disease. It's probably not a home run. It's probably not a cure, but it's probably something that used particularly in a setting of early disease when patients have early symptoms probably can be effective at mitigating a bad outcome in a number of patients. And so I think this could be part of an overall therapeutic armamentarium going into the fall or going into the summer that makes us much better positioned to deal with COVID-19.
What does it tell you about what the broader study that's going on concurrently may show here?
Well, what they got was one clinical trial site. They got a report from an investigator about the results in one site. This is a multi-center trial. But that, along with other things that we've heard about this drug, other reports out of China and some of the data of use of the product in China, what you hear certainly anecdotally from physicians and what you've seen in the data sets that have been published to date certainly suggests the drug's active. It's not an optimal drug by any means. It has to be given intravenously. Supply is going to be an issue. It's hard to manufacture. There are issues with malfunction of liver tests, so you get a bump in your liver enzymes with this drug. That's in most cases self-correcting. They ultimately resolve, but it's not a perfect drug by any means. But oftentimes in these kinds of settings, when you have a virus that you're developing therapeutics against, your initial wave of drugs aren't perfect therapeutics, but they work. And that was the experience with HIV. It was the experience with hepatitis C. Where the initial drugs that we developed against those diseases were not optimal drugs, but they worked in the disease, they helped certain patients, and ultimately we developed better therapeutics. This is a drug, Remdesivir, that we have a lot of experience with. It's been on the shelf for a long time, tried against Ebola, tried against SARS, and so there's an accumulated safety database. We understand the drug fairly well, and so that safety database, coupled with the efficacy data we're seeing emerge about it, could form the basis of an approval either under an EUA or accelerated approval sooner rather than later, perhaps.